Hello, and welcome to the Get Lean and Eat Clean podcast. My name is Brian Grin. I'm a certified health coach, trainer, and author. And this podcast is for middle-aged men and women looking to optimize their health and get their bodies back to what it once was 10 to 15 years ago. I will give you simple, actionable items to get long-term sustainable results. Thanks for listening and enjoy the show. All right, welcome to the Get Lean, Eat Clean podcast. My name is Brian Grin. I hope you had a great weekend. Happy Tuesday. And I'm really excited to bring you today's episode because I decided to bring you the top 3 micro shows, most downloaded micro shows of 2021. Now, the great thing about this is I think all 3 of these are really relevant, and they all are big pieces of the puzzle when it comes to living optimally. Now, number 1 was my ideal fat-burning workout regimen. And with this, I'm going to go through, what type of cardio should you do, how much should you work out, what types of lifts should you do, and so on and so forth. So I'm excited to sort of rebroadcast that. Next is which foods to focus on, and that's nose to tail, nutrient-dense foods. And I'm going to go through a list of, foods that you can write down, print them out, bring them to the store or order it online, and really to get the most out of your day and feel energy day in, day out. And then number 3, which is pretty cool, is my Fat Burner Blueprint, which was one of the most downloaded episodes. And I love it because really I can talk till I'm blue in the face regarding, how to live optimally and have energy and sleep well and so on and so forth. But if you don't have a plan to implement it, it really is going to go to waste. So the fact that the first 2 episodes here are going to talk about burning fat when working out and which foods to focus on are huge principles of health. But what I love is number 3, my Fat Burner Blueprint implementation is just as important because we got to set goals. We got to know where we're starting from in order to know where we're going. So I'm excited to bring you all 3 of these today. And at the end, obviously with the Fat Burner Blueprint, this is something that you want to look into. Feel free to reach out. It's not for everybody, but I would love to hear from you. And if you got questions, we can see if it's a right fit for you. So anyways, I'm excited to bring you my top 3 most downloaded micro shows for 2021. And enjoy. Thanks so much. Eating nutrient-dense foods. And I try to find these pillars of health that are like the low-hanging fruits, the things that you can do that make the biggest impact in other areas of your life. And I just find that if you can focus on the sourcing of your food and the nutrient density of your food and eating it day in, day out, I think that is going to be one of the biggest pillars of health that's going to affect not only how you perform in the gym, but also in the bed and, how you sleep, your stress levels, and also being able to, go periods of time without eating. I always, if you listen, obviously I always talk about fasting and, that's become sort of a hot topic trend. And, the thing about it is if you're eating crappy foods, fasting's not going to be easy. And a lot of other things aren't going to fall in place. So I figure today I'd say, it's the end of the year. We have all this stuff going on with, COVID and things like that. Why not focus on what we can control, which is our health and to the best of our ability. And let's do that by eating nutrient-dense foods. So I figured I would, take a page out of, Brad has a sort of a carnivore score chart on his website. I can definitely leave a link for that. And I'm going to use that as a basis of it, along with sort of my thoughts on a few different foods. But, I used to not eat meat. I used to just have fish and vegetables, which is not, I'm not saying that's right or wrong, to each their own. So you want to, if you want to eat that way, that's great. I feel like I thrived on it to some degree, but after a while, I felt like I was having a tough time getting enough protein. That was the big thing. And you can only have so much fish or pea protein or things like that. And what I started to learn was that the most bioavailable forms of protein come in meats. And so I wanted to find places that had, grass-fed, grass-finished meats, because yes, it can be a little bit more expensive, but I always say if I'm going to spend money on something, it's going to be on my health, and it's going to be on the foods that I'm putting in my body, because that's what makes you run. And if you're not running well, then everything else, you could throw everything else out the window. So I don't like to spend a lot of money on many different things, but on my health and on the foods that I'm putting in my body, and for my family's bodies, my dogs and my wife, we really try to focus on quality, nutrient dense foods. So hopefully this will maybe motivate you to do the same, because a lot of times I think we just go about this in an aimlessly, um, ordering in foods. Where's that food coming from? And I know, I'm not asking you to go crazy, and I'm not saying you can't order in food, but a lot of times we're not putting in the research or doing our own due diligence to find out where is that food coming from. And I think it's important. I really do. I think this is something that can really make an impact on your health, because I talk about it a lot with my clients. And so let's talk about, some of the things first that could be missing if you're just doing plant-based. And if you want to do plant-based, I'm not against that by all means, but you might have to supplement. You might have to find ways to get around, because you're going to miss out on certain nutrients that you're not going to get from animal foods. And because as I go through sort of the chart of what's the most nutrient dense foods on our planet, a lot of it is going to go under these animal foods. So you're going to miss out on vitamin B family, a lot, vitamin B12. You're going to miss out on creatine, vitamin D3, DHA. You're going to miss out on some heme iron, along with something called taurine. These are just a few of the things that you're going to miss out on if you're not having perhaps eggs, fish, and meat. And there's definitely ways you can get around it. But I would just try to focus on, if you're not restricted by eating fish or meat or things like that, then here would be a good chart to sort of follow. And this would be sort of the hierarchy of what would be the most nutrient dense foods, all the way down to maybe things that you don't need to eat as much. But I would definitely focus in on getting, grass-fed, grass-finished liver. And I know that might sound crazy, but I will say this: I've been eating liver for the last couple of years, and my wife makes it, and it's great. Some people eat raw liver. I don't. I have not yet, but maybe down the line. But it's really off the charts when it comes to nutrient dense foods. You can even get these liver crisps. I can't. The name of the brand is I'm forgetting right now off the top of my head. But if you just Google liver crisps, what a great way to snack if you're going to snack. And I know I'm against snacking. So, or you can add them to a meal. Like, I'll just say, for example, I know this sounds maybe a little bit crazy, but everyone grabs chips and dip, or chips and guac. But or what I like to use is these liver chips, and you can put them with other things, and you're getting a great nutrient dense food, and you're not having just corn chips. So that's a great hack to try as well. Oysters are actually high in nutrient dense foods. Also salmon roe as well. And so if you think about eating nose to tail, which is something that I've been focusing a little bit more on, I don't eat every organ, but liver, heart, kidney, things like that. Also, you want to get quality ones, grass-fed, grass-finished. Along with, I've had some individuals on my podcast, the company Pluck. They actually have if you just Google Pluck, or you look up on the podcast, and they have a thing you can sprinkle on your foods that is an organ-based seasoning, which is really cool because you don't even really know. And I've been putting that in my eggs, and so check that out. But if you don't want to eat, you can try some organ supplementations. My buddy Brad Kearns and Ancestral Supplements partnered on a product called Mofo, male optimization formula, and that's something that I take. So if you don't want to eat organs, perhaps maybe a little bit of supplementation with them wouldn't be a bad thing. And then from there, this is something I talked about with Brad because a lot of people might use the excuse that perhaps it's too expensive to do these grass-fed, grass-finished, perhaps like ribeye is one of mine. Great protein content in there, along with some saturated fat, which we all know is good, and that's a whole nother episode. But if you don't want to necessarily spend the money on a nice grass-fed, grass-finished ribeye, check out the Smash family. And this is something I talked to Brad about, which is sardines, mackerel, anchovies, salmon, and herring. You might not like them all. And if you listen to my podcast, I implement these into my first meal, which is a lighter meal around probably 2-3 o'clock. And I'll usually lately I've been doing mackerel with herring. Mackerel is, and you can get this brand, I've been getting at Whole Foods. They make a good quality mackerel. Actually, Patagonia is the brand. You think, oh, Patagonia, they only make clothes, but they actually, they source some good mackerel. And I think they also do oysters as well. But either way, check out that brand. You can get them at Whole Foods, and they're not really that expensive. And you combine that with herring, some good quality herring, and I like that as a meal. So it might be a little crazy for some people, but sometimes you want to get a little bit out of your comfort zone maybe on this stuff. Try it. You try it long enough, and you might start enjoying it. So those are some oil cold water fish that aren't crazy expensive and can go a long way. And you get a great source of omega-3s from that as well. Next would be like shellfish. So shellfish, oysters plus clams, crab, lobster, mussels, octopus, scallops. This is something I don't put a ton in my diet, but occasionally some scallops from time to time, and maybe some oysters. So if you like shellfish, you get a lot of omega-3 fats from this as well. And obviously you want to get sustainably caught, raised oysters and clams and things like that. And this is something that, as far as, being expensive, I guess if lobster can be expensive. So this is probably not something maybe you're going to have all the time, but from time to time, this might be a good option. Then you get into, eggs. I mean, healthy fats, choline, you get your amino acids, your B vitamins. So, eggs, good pasture raised eggs. I just went to our local, there's this local farm, although it's 45 minutes away, but I get raw milk and then I buy their eggs. You can get regular eggs. You can do duck, goose, quail, ostrich. The nice thing about those is, you're not going to find, those aren't in mass production. So you're going to get good quality and healthier animals. So you want to make sure you get local, certified, humane, and pasture raised eggs. And obviously, this is something that's not overly expensive, can be implemented. I like to have, sometimes people eat them raw. They put them in their shakes, which you can do. Or if you like to sort of scramble them up and maybe put a little bit of that pluck that I mentioned to you before, where you're getting some organ meat based seasoning in there as well. That was something I talked to. The name is just fleeting to me right now. When you do all these interviews, sometimes things blend together, but there's a good one. So I like to do eggs and meat, leftover meat sometimes. And that was the next thing I was going to mention was red meat. The nutritional profile, the fatty acid profile, is pretty solid when it comes to, like, let's just use a ribeye for an example. You're going to get, your A's, your B's, your D's, your E's, your K's as far as your vitamins, calcium, chromium, cobalt, copper, iron, magnesium, manganese, potassium, selenium, sodium, zinc. So you're getting these essential minerals that you're not going to get from a lot of foods. And actually, I'll just throw a shout out to who I had on the podcast once before. This is a great book by Dr. Judy Choi. I'll just put it up here if you're watching on YouTube, Carnivore Cure. And I'm not necessarily promoting a pure carnivore diet, and she does, and that it's great. But I will just say, in general, this book is great whether you're doing carnivore or you're not. Um, so it's called Carnivore Cure, and I actually like to get Dr. Troy back on the podcast. That would be great. So yeah, so ribeye, I can go down the line on that, but that would be a great place to start. And then you can do, your bone broths, your lamb chops, things like that. And I mentioned obviously beef liver. You're getting all the you're getting B12, choline, biotin, iron, copper, zinc, folate. Okay, and so I would say that would be a great place to start. And if you're wondering what about chicken, turkey, or pork, that I would say is sort of the next level down. But if you're getting local 100% grass-fed pasture-raised poultry and maybe some heritage bred pork, that is fine. I don't eat a lot of pork and chicken, but it has a solid nutrient dense profile, maybe not quite up there with the organ meats and the red meats, but it's definitely up there. It's definitely up there. And after that, I would probably say if you could do some raw, organic, high fat dairy, if you want to add that, if dairy doesn't bother you, give it a try. If it does, then obviously you want to avoid, but you want to avoid all the low and non-fat dairies. Okay. And all the conventional pasteurizing of them, which is tough to avoid because that's everywhere. If you could find some raw cheeses and some raw milk, I love it. I've been buying it for the last month or so, and once you go raw, you're not going back to the normal milk. I can tell you that. But it's not always accessible for everyone. If you're going to go dairy, I would definitely go the full fat route. And then after that, you can add in plant foods. I'm not totally against adding in plant foods as long as you're not sensitive to them. Obviously, fiber is something that, for some people, they can handle it. Some people cannot. But, fiber can go a long way, and you're going to get those from a lot of your plant foods. I like to have avocado from time to time, maybe some fermented foods, kefir, kimchi, and what did I just have that? Oh, sauerkraut was fermented sauerkraut. So these are things you can add in maybe to help just mix it up. And, you don't want to just be bored with what you're eating all the time. And if you're wondering about fruit, I would say, stick with locally grown in-season fruits if you could do. I know a lot of people knock on fructose, which is, mainly what's in fruit and the high content it can be in. But I think if you stick to just having it in season and having, mainly like the berries, which are a little bit lower on the glycemic chart, and they have high antioxidant properties, I think that's not bad to add in from time to time. And if you want to add in some sweet potato or squash, those are those are not bad to add in every once in a while as well. So yeah, I mean, I occasionally have nut butters as well. I'm not sensitive to nuts. Some people are. So that's something you just want to take into consideration. Brad, just to plug him again, we talked a little bit about his nut butter that he came out with. That's something that's like a splurge for me. So if you want to splurge on some nut butters from time to time, I wouldn't go crazy with almonds just because you got to be, if you're sensitive to oxalates, just be careful with that. You don't want to have too many almonds just because the high oxalate levels as well as spinach. But those are some people can handle, some people cannot. So I would say that is the hierarchy. I could say that if you focus on nutrient dense foods, you're going to snack less because you're feeding the body what it wants, really. And if we talk about having 2, maybe 3 solid nutrient dense foods, and that could be if you're having 2, for example, a lot of times for me, it's going to be herring and mackerel for my first meal, and then maybe with some eggs, and then the second meal will be some type of wild caught or grass fed, grass finished meat. in the evening. And if I want to add a little bit of vegetables on top of that, I'll do that. And I think that, again, that's what works for me. But I think if you focus, like I mentioned, on these nutrient dense foods, if you could start implementing some organs into your life, you're going to realize that you're really missing out and missing the boat on having some of the best foods on the planet. So as long as you get them and source them, and some of the companies that I like to use, Force of Nature, and U.S. Wellness Meats has some great meats as well, and organs as well. There's a ton of great companies that have popped up over, I would say the last probably 3 to 5 years. So let me know if you have any questions. Hopefully this will help you get started to a great path for 2022, 2022, and live a healthy, plentiful life. So look out for my interview and my dual syndicated podcast with Brad Kearns. Also, I'm going to have a new challenge coming out as well. So look out for that. And feel free to share this with anyone who you think might be looking to upgrade their health. Thanks so much for listening, and enjoy the rest of your day. Today, I'm going to talk about a topic that I think is really relevant for a lot of different people. I get questions all the time. Well, how much cardio should I do? Should I be, lifting weights, and how many times per week? I think it all depends on your lifestyle, your goals, but I'm going to try to just lay out what would be ideal for efficiency, for fat burning, and hopefully you can implement some of this into your routine if you haven't already, because I'm actually going to start doing that as well. I do a lot of this, but sometimes we can always add more or take out. And what you're going to notice from building a consistent program is it's not about this crazy 2-hour workouts that just cause a lot of stress and take a lot of time. I believe that the industry, and I'm seeing this with just a lot of people that I'm interviewing, and with my buddy Brad Kearns talks a lot about with his guests, is these micro workouts where you don't need to go to the gym or be gone for an hour and a half and come back dripped in sweat. You can do these quick level workouts, these quick micro workouts, and be a lot more efficient and get a lot more bang for your buck. So I think a consistent program is a combination of lifting, sprinting occasionally, and also mobility work. And so I'm going to talk about that today. And you don't need these overly stressful exercise regimens to get results. And I can tell you that just because I've implemented the X3 workouts into my program and also my fat burner blueprint, and people are getting great results, putting on muscle, getting stronger, not having issues with their joints, and not being sore all the time. So one of the things that you want to keep in mind when you're doing any type of cardio or aerobic exercise is heart rate. And obviously there's a lot of heart rate monitors out there. You can get one easily. But you want to keep that in mind, because when you get to a certain point with heart rate, there could be like a black hole, they call it, where you're exercising almost too intensely, and it's actually doing you more harm than good. So too intense for too long. But if you find sort of that sweet spot, and you use that as your sort of your baseline when you're doing aerobic exercise, that can go a long way. Now, how do you find that sweet spot? Well, Dr. Phil Maffetone, he's a coach advisor to a ton of great triathletes in the world, and the author of the big book of endurance training and racing. He recommends, and a lot of this is science-based, that you should be working out at or below a heart rate of 180 minus your age. So that for me, that'd be about 140. And that would be your target. So even at this very comfortable intensity level, you're working, trust me, it's not that comfortable, but it's not overly crazy. You're going to stimulate a lot of good, let's just say, metabolic functions of your body. And also you're going to improve your cardiovascular function, lung capacity, all other things, as well as like strengthening your bones and joints and connective tissues. You're also minimizing the risk of injury. So you want to keep this in mind when you're doing cardio. Now, how can you implement this into your workout routine? Well, I'm going to talk about that. So what would be an ideal workout regimen to follow? Let me just give you sort of a high level. One, you want to move frequently every day. This doesn't mean you need to go for a run every day. This means you just need to get up and not have long stretches of inactivity. If you're just sitting at your desk for 8 hours, I mean, I'm sure you're going to get up a little bit, but make sure you get up every 30 minutes and move around. I actually kneel at my desk, so I don't like to sit. So I get better posture. My hips are in flexion. I'm extending my hips. And anyways, but that's another thing. Not a lot of people kneel. I like to, but I'm up. You want to get up, go for walks, maybe cycle. Doesn't have to be long. And then you want to implement some mobility work. So one, you want to move frequently, avoid like prolonged inactivity. Two, you want to do some mobility work. This could be 10-minute. I have actually in the 21-day challenge, which is coming out soon, you'll be hearing about that. I'm revamping my 21-day intermittent fasting challenge. But anyways, mobility work. I do a 10-minute movement prep. So that video's in there. But you could do Pilates, yoga, any type of mobility or rolling, dynamic rolling, stretching. Brent Brookbush, who I just had on the podcast, definitely listen to that one. Actually, that one's coming out soon. I don't think it has come out yet. No, it came out. Okay, I'm losing track. No, it comes out next week. I'm sorry. Okay. Anyways, he has a ton of great programs as far as mobility work and rolling and things like that. So move frequently. Next is you want to lift heavy things. This could be using the X3 bar. This could be deadlifts, squats, kettlebells. You want to do that about 2 to 3 times per week, for 10 to 30 minutes. So you want to do brief, intense resistance exercises. Okay. Next is you want to do some type of like a sprint or a bike. You could even do this in the pool, but you want to do this like maybe once a week or once every 10 days when you're feeling energized. And this is like doing several 8 to 20 second bursts. So my good friend Brad Kearns had Dr. Craig Marker on, and he talks about what's called HIRT, which is high intensity repeat training. Now, the key is you want to keep the intensity up each time. So you want to practice these exercises short duration. Intensity is key. Don't worry about any guilt about not training longer. And the work duration should be between 5 to 15 seconds. Now, I have to say, I have not really implemented this, and I'm going to start doing this. I think I'm going to just do it on a bike. I'm not a big biker, but I can do 8 to 20 second sprints for on and off for a minute. So you want to make sure you rest too. So let's say you do a 10-second sprint, then you rest for 45 seconds. Then you do it again. And you want to train in every minute on the minute. So you can do 10 minutes and then 50 seconds off, 10 minutes on, 50 seconds off. And you want to pick exercises that you're not going to deal with injury, less risk of injury, so you can sort of maintain your max power. So sprinting would be great, but let's be realistic. We're in our 40s, 50s, and above. Do we really want to be sprinting, and do we have a place to do that at? So, perhaps you could row, you could swim, you could do sled pushes. You could even do kettlebells if you have make sure you have someone teach you the correct form. So you want to do these. So just to highlight what I've talked about, ideal workout regimen, move frequently every day. This is going for walks. This is just getting up and making sure that you're not sitting all the time. Then you want to implement some mobility work. And I would say doing this every day to every other day. This could be a 10-minute, literally yoga session. Next, lift heavy things. So this any type of resistance training, what's heavy for you is not heavy for someone else. It doesn't have to be crazy, but I would do that brief, intense resistance training at least 2 to 3 times per week. And that session does not need to be 2 hours. That could be 10 to 15 minute session. Usually my X3 workouts are about 15 minutes. And then you want to do that HURT, the high intensity repeat training. And like I mentioned, this would be maybe once a week or once every 10 days. And right there, if you could do those, let's say 4 things: move frequently, mobility work, lift heavy things, and do HURT, high intensity repeat training, you are definitely on your way. And if you don't do any of them now, maybe start with one and then build into it. So that would be ideal. And when you're doing your cardio workouts, make sure you're doing 180 minus your age. All right. So for me, that's around 140. So that would be like cycling or hiking or walking. And then, yeah. So that would be the basis around having an ideal workout regimen. And I think that's a great place to start. So if you have any questions, let me know about that. And again, these don't have to be crazy workouts. These are something that you can implement, and just make sure you're moving every day and doing something positive for your health. And if you have any questions regarding this, let me know. Hope you're enjoying these micro podcasts, and we will talk soon. Have a great day. And what I thought I'd talk today about is, since it is the new year, and a lot of people like to set, New Year's goals and do stuff that they've been pushing off to the side. And I wanted to actually touch on my signature program. It's called the Fat Burner Blueprint Program. And this was designed pretty much from all my 20 years of experience in health and wellness, and, put it all together into one package for my clients. And I typically work with males, 40 years and up, and middle-aged, getting up there, looking maybe to get their bodies back to what they were maybe in their 30s or even perhaps their 20s. Because the thing with weight is, it's not like something, for the most part, and not even just weight, but inches around your waist and body fat percentage. These are things that creep up over time. It's not something that comes of 1 year and, oh, I just put on all this weight. It can happen, don't get me wrong, especially with the quarantine and anything, where people were staying home, and some people took advantage of it and actually got healthier. Some people didn't, and got worse. And but either way, people put on weight 10, 15, 20 years it takes them to put this weight on. And so I wanted to come up with a program that wasn't short. Typically I work with people for about 6 months, and put a system together, 6-step system. And I want to just touch on that today. And whether this is something that's intriguing to you or not, that's completely fine. I think the most important thing to take from this is the fact that if you are wanting to reach certain goals, whether it's in health or business or anything, it really helps to have a coach. I have coaches in not almost all areas of my life to help me get to where I want to go. And there's certain areas where we're really good, and be it being self-disciplined. And I'm sure you recognize this. Maybe in business, this is an area that you're really good at, but maybe in health or in, losing inches, this is an area where you might need a coach. So whether you use myself or someone else out there, I think most importantly, it goes a long way if you're being held accountable on a daily, weekly basis, and it's worth it. It's worth your time. It's worth your money. And whoever you use in any area of your life, don't be ashamed to get a coach, because it goes a long way. So anyways, that's my plug on coaching. I am biased, but I do think it makes sense, because I use coaches in all areas of my life, like I mentioned. So let me just run through sort of my 6-step process, and and how I go about that. Now, these steps can go in any order, and in some areas we focus on more than others. The first step, which usually is the first way to start, is creating some type of clarity. Understanding your baseline, like where are you at? And one of the things that I like to utilize is something called a Dexa Scan. If this is something you've never done, definitely check it out. There are other ways. There's like other ways to measure body fat percentage and bone mass and lean mass and things like that. But I just found this was a quick and easy way and pretty accurate. So definitely check it out if you've never done one before. There's one not far from where I'm at in my neck of the woods up in North Chicago. But you want to set a baseline. You want to sort of know where you're at before you can sort of set those goals to where you want to go. And this is a good way to do that. So one of the other things that I do with a lot of clients is we get crystal clear on personalizing the program, meaning, why do you want to do this? Why are you wanting to make a shift in your body? And we're going to uncover, any unconscious, self-sabotaging patterns that may hinder your progress. And we all have these things that come up, and they've been around for years and years. So for one thing, we want to get crystal clear on your personal why, on why you want to improve your health. And I encourage this to anybody, is you really want to get crystal clear on this. And then we want a complete awareness of any unconscious patterns that have hindered your progress in the past. So this is something that I work on clients with, and you really want to create this clarity because this is the main driver of the program. And once you have this and you have your full baseline assessment with like a Dexa scan, you're sort of ready to start to hit the ground running. And after that, we want to identify a lot of the major culprits and the low-hanging fruits that to make the biggest impact in your health, as so you can get results quick. Because although this is a longer program, you do want to get small wins, because it's all about building momentum. And so you want to build momentum, get some small wins, and just keep going from there. And so the benefit is knowing that you can find these 1 to 3 habits, that these sort of low hanging fruits that are getting in your way, and that are sort of that you have to make these changes, and you start with sort of those, and then you build from there. So that's what I call step 2 in the process, and that's the small changes and big results master plan, and that's what I call it. So after step 2, we're going to start looking into what's called like an activity upgrade. If you have a fitness routine, what are you currently doing? And if you don't, well, let's come up with one. And one of the things that I've implemented into my life and that I've used in this program is the X3 bar. And I'm sure if you've listened to any of my podcasts, you'll know that this is something that I've utilized over the last couple of years. And now that I've had such great results with it, I use with mostly all my clients, even ones that have a routine already. But when you can implement something that's sort of a simple, proven 20-minute workout, customized and done to deliver max results in the shortest period of time, that's something that is attractive to a lot of people, and especially myself, because it's all about just getting results. And I've find that is why I wanted to implement something like the X3 bar into my program. So the goal is to build overall strength and muscle tone. And to do that, you have to do resistance training under some load. It has to feel heavy, and you have to create some type of stimulus there. And that I find that with the variable resistance of the X3 bands and the ground plate and the Olympic bar, it's a good combination, and it's safe and effective, especially if you're getting up there. And I'm done doing bench press and things like that have bothered my elbow and shoulder for years. And when you get into variable resistance, it really makes a difference. So I know that sounds like an infomercial, but it's not. It's just something that I feel strongly about, and I've implemented and gotten a lot of great results with. So we want to build overall strength, and we're going to do that through an activity upgrade. And that's step 3 in the Fat Burner Blueprint. Step 4 is the title is Sleep Like a Superhero Game Plan. I like to make fun titles, and this one is getting you into the correct routine around sleep. And this really is the number 1 priority. Most of my guests, this comes up, I would say, the most. And having a sleep routine, something that's simple, manageable, and the bottom line is, if you can get quality sleep, everything else can fall into place. But if you're not getting quality sleep, then all the other stuff's not really going to mean much. So the goal is to get you feeling energized for the day, to get you sleeping throughout the night, and obviously get mental clarity to focus and help you perform, whether it's in work or sport or whatever else you're doing. So we're going to really work around getting not only a sleep routine, but also a morning routine as well. I think they go hand in hand. So that is step number 4, is really wrapping our arms around a solid sleep routine and a morning routine. After that, we're going to touch on stress management. Now, this is something there are some clients or some individuals need more work on, and some don't. And it just sort of it's a case by case basis. But we're going to try to create some type of simple practice to down regulate your system, decrease stress, and connect you to the present moment. This is something I like to focus on a lot, being present. It's something actually I write in my journal pretty much every day, because it's so easy with Instagram and social media and just the way our lives are to get ahead of ourselves, when we can just you really want to just enjoy that present moment. And as a golfer, this is something that I really like to focus on when I'm playing golf. So I personally think a lot of things, that principles that go along with golf, actually cross into life, and this is one of them. So we want to create a practice, if you don't have one, to manage stress and to feel more calm and obviously peaceful throughout the day, handle stressful situations with grace and in a good manner. And obviously this all leads to feeling happier and healthier. So obviously I'm a big proponent of yoga or some type of meditation. There's so many great apps out there, so we might utilize some tools like that. And even if it's a 10-minute meditation, which is something that I've been doing with my wife before bed, and it's a great thing to do with a partner, because why not bring someone else in? You're always, as I talked about with Brad Kearns, you want to surround yourself with healthy people and with people that are doing some of the great habits that you're doing. So doing some meditation with a partner before bed is a great way to implement it into your life. So this is something that we work on. It's called, I call it stress management. And that's step 5 in the Fat Burner Blueprint. And then the last step, which definitely is not the least step because it's an important one, is nutrition and meal timing. And this is something where, we want to, whatever your relationship with food is in the past, we want to change that relationship. And I'm having all these guests on my podcast, and one person's carnivore, one person's keto, one person's vegetarian, the other person's like I mentioned, carnivore or whatever. It's not about pigeonholing yourself into a certain area. It's just about finding what works for you. And bottom line is eliminating a lot of the processed foods that are just wrecking people's health. So we focus on real foods. We focus on sustained energy and utilizing both energy sources for your body, which some people are what's called glucose burner, sugar burners, and some people just are fat burners. I'd like for you to be like I talked about in an interview that's coming out soon, Ben Azadi. We talk about keto flex, where you can be a fat burner for a while, but you can also change your fuel sourcing and occasionally have your days where you increase carbs and you are become a sugar burner. It's important to sort of be both and not just be one or the other. So this is something we get into. And, the bottom line is we want to just transform your relationship with food. And while doing this, giving you sustained energy, but also getting you into fat burning mode and getting those inches down. So you can't outwork a bad diet. And this is definitely a big part of the program, not only what you're eating, but also when you're eating as well, and focusing on meal timing and, having it so you're not intermittently eating throughout the day. Snacking can be a big detriment to a lot of people. And so we focus on meal timing. And obviously, I'm a big proponent of fasting. So we eventually get to, once you get somewhat keto and fat adapted, fasting will become a lot easier. So those are the 6 steps that we do. And the whole goal is to obviously get you where you want to go, get you metabolically flexible. And so this is something that, yeah, I'm passionate about. I've worked with a bunch of clients with, and it's a newer program, but it's taken, my 20 years of experience and put it into this program. So that's called my Fat Burner Blueprint program. It's not something I talk a lot about, but if this is something that you are looking to do, definitely just shoot me an email. We can have a discussion or go on my website. You could do like a 15-minute call, and we can just talk about your goals and see if it's a match. It's not for everybody. You could also email me at brian@briangrin.com. That's brian@briangrin.com. And let me know if you have any questions. So that's what I wanted to touch on today. Part of it was to explain the Fat Burner Blueprint because I get a lot of questions about it, but also was just to emphasize the point of, it's January 4th. And if you don't have a coach for whatever area of life that you're looking to improve, perhaps it's time to look for one. And I really do think that is the missing piece of the puzzle for a lot of people, not only in health, but business or anything else that they want to, build an acumen in, is having someone that's been there and that's done that and that can hold you accountable. And I truly think that'll stop people from, let's just say, yo-yo dieting and getting on something for a week and getting off it the next week. Because we all need to be held accountable. And that's I think, the fastest and best way to reach your goals. So hope this helps. And if you got questions, remember, you can email me, or if you go on briangrin.com, I have a 15-minute sort of a consultation chat, free chat, that we can discuss your goals and see if you're right for the program. So that's all for today. So go out there, reach those goals, get an accountability partner or a coach. And I wish you nothing but health and happiness. So thanks so much for listening, and I will talk to you soon. Thanks for listening to the Get Lean, Eat Clean podcast. I understand there are millions of other podcasts out there, and you've chosen to listen to mine, and I appreciate that. Check out the show notes at briangrin.com for everything that was mentioned in this episode. Feel free to subscribe to the podcast and share it with a friend or family member that's looking to get their body back to what it once was. Thanks again, and have a great day.